This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Aaron Torres is joining us right now. In March AT, it's like tough to keep track of every single thing going on in college basketball. You got legendary coaches leaving posts. You've got seasons coming to an end, bubbles being popped and everything, man. But is this the best time of the year for you?
It's a really fun time. Yeah, it's funny. I do a podcast 3 to 4 times a week, and today was like by far. I said like I don't even think I could listen to myself talk for as much as I did. But you just start talking about stuff, and you guys know how it is. You run out of time, and in a podcast form, it's kind of more free flowing, where there's nothing that you have to. There's no commercial break you have to get to or whatever. The point I'm trying to say, Phil, is that's exactly right. It just feels like one thing overlaps with the other. It's interesting in college football. The coaching carousel really kind of ramps up right as that, the conference championships and regular seasons end. So it's kind of one leads into the other, where, as you said in basketball, Phil, they really kind of overlap with each other. And so it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just means that there's a lot going on if you love this sport this time of year, and I know everybody listening does. So fun time of year, and Hogs play tonight, and half-price apps and taps sound good to me, I'll tell you that much.
They sure do, even with the fajitas as well. It was just a lot to eat, but I think we'd be okay with that. Well, let's get to the
Arkansas. Problems, baby, March problems. Let's
get to Arkansas and A&M. The Razorbacks beat A&M once. They lost to them once, and each team able to win on their home floor. It seems Arkansas, both teams are in the tournament now. I don't know if you felt that Arkansas needed to pad their resume or anything. I just thought the net ranking was pretty much going to get them in the strength of schedule. So now it's about just trying to advance, and keep finding ways to win games.
Yeah, and I think, obviously the last time we talked was before the season finale, which didn't go the way that anybody wanted. But I remember saying this on last week's show, is that there is still, as weird as it sounds, a lot of game time and game reps to build some momentum going into the NCAA tournament. And so I'm with you, Phil. I'm not a huge bracketologist guy. Like, I'm not great on, who has to do what and all of that stuff. But just looking at the numbers, it seemed as though Arkansas was pretty comfortably in. And so if you're under that assumption, then it's really not about, whatever. It's about, you're going to be somewhere between a 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, whatever. It's really about just building momentum and being the best version of yourself. So I thought for, stretches last night, we probably did see some version of the best version of Arkansas, and now it's about, can you maintain it for 40 minutes? Texas A&M is really good. I think the one thing with them that stands out is that they have been just so consistent all year, not too high, not too low. They've basically been the same team since SEC play started. But to your point, Arkansas is one of the few teams that can say that they've beaten them. And it's going to take a great effort tonight, but I'm excited to watch that first semifinal and first quarterfinal of the evening session in Nashville.
Yeah, A&M just tries to beat you up. I mean, they're so physical. I liked what Arkansas did against Auburn, although I think Arkansas should beat Auburn most times. With this A&M team, do they got one guy like a Brandon Miller, like an Anthony Black? Do they have somebody that you're just like, man, we got to stop him?
Well, the lead guard, Wade Taylor, is really good, and, I forget all the numbers, but statistically he's been one of the best guards in the SEC, but I'm with you, Matt. I think they're really kind of a beat-you-by-committee kind of team, and I think it's on both ends of the court. They're great on defense. They rebound as a team very well. And they attack the rim as the team very well. I believe, I could be mistaken, but I think they're number one in the country.
I was going to say their rebounding has got to be the best in the SEC. They're the best rebounding team I saw all year.
Yeah, and they're great at rebounding, and they're great at getting to the rim. And so, that's some simple mental math right there, right? If they take away second chance opportunities for you, if they create second chance opportunities for themselves, and if they create free opportunities for themselves at the free throw line, that's a lot of circumstances where, they can beat you without having to be great or one guy going off for 30. But I would say Wade Taylor's the guy. But I don't think that, if you hold Brandon Miller to single digits, you're probably going to beat Alabama. If you hold Wade Taylor to single digits, I don't necessarily think it's a precursor to a definitive win over Texas A&M. I think the biggest thing is just to match that physicality, right? And Arkansas, through the years under Muss, has been a physical, tough team themselves. But obviously A&M's got a bunch of 22, 23-year-old grown men. Arkansas has some of those, but they got some young guys as well. So I think that's the big key is match the physicality. Don't let them get second-chance opportunities. Obviously, you want to try and keep them off the free throw line, but that, to me, feels like the key to this game tonight.
A&M +5 rebounding against opponents in the SEC. They outscore opponents by almost 7 a game at the foul line. Muss was talking about rebounding and defense last night. We'll hear that, and I think he's also talking a little bit about what you need today.
The two things that you control are rebounding and defense. No matter how nervous you are, no matter how much angst you have, it should never, ever affect your defensive rebounding or your defensive position or your defensive intensity. And, I thought start the game with maybe a little bit of angst offensively. Obviously, the 19 turnovers is of great concern. But I thought from an effort standpoint, we were really good.
You could tell, AT, the way the starting lineup was constructed yesterday, that the focus is on toughness. I mean, you talk about rebounding defense. It's about toughness. It's about attitude. He started Kamani Johnson in that game. Now, in the two A&M games in the regular season, both the Mitchell twins got a start. So you're going to you got to come with the same attitude, of like elbows up, grr. That's what this game's about.
I like the grr. I like the sound effects too. That was really good. I think you're 100% right. Let me ask you guys a question. Am I crazy? And I was flipping between a bunch of games last night, so I'd be lying if I said I watched every second of the Arkansas game. It felt like, guys, and tell me if I'm wrong, that they put Anthony Black back on the ball more last night. Is that fair to say? And I know he had some sort of nagging thing late in the game, yeah.
They moved better, AT. What they did without the ball. He did have the ball a little bit, but not. It wasn't drastically more. But he did. They were making a conscious effort to get him the ball. Yes, when they were bringing it up, you're right there. But what they did better. Auburn jumped out in this zone a little bit early on, and they were moving so good without the ball. Auburn had to get out of it, and so it was But their movement without, they weren't just standing around waiting on Nick Smith to make a play, waiting on Ricky Council to go ISO, or waiting on Anthony Black to clear you out and do that. So they moved a lot better without the ball.
Yeah, and the one thing I'd add too is that having this, it's essentially really the longest stretch that you're going to have outside of like a Christmas break, post-Christmas break that you're going to have all year when you don't play from Saturday till Thursday, Saturday till Friday. And I think it really gives you a good chance to reevaluate a lot of things. I mean, I remember even dating back to the Nevada days. I remember talking to guys on Coach Muss's staff about, one thing that he really emphasized was self-scouting. And it was sometimes it was about this and that, but I do remember when they had breaks in action back in Nevada. I remember vividly talking to them about this. They would self-scout, and they would say, okay, what are we doing well right now? What do we need to work on right now? And it wouldn't shock me if they did a complete evaluation of the team and the program at the end of the regular season over the course of those 3-4 days that they had before the SEC tournament. Because what I saw, Matt, is exactly what you just said, was a team that looked more confident, looked more sure in themselves, and then obviously, as Phil just referenced, a lineup that really reflected, hey, this is, we're not just going to go try to beat Arkansas. We're going to put out a lineup that we think does what they do well. And I think there's something to be said for, coaches that want to stay true to themselves. But I think there's also something to be said for, hey, in a tournament setting, we're going to face 3 to 4 different teams over different days with different strengths and weaknesses. And if we think we can just play the same way 4 days in a row to win, that's probably not realistic. So, obviously I'm curious to see if the momentum continues into this week or into this game tonight, But I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of self-scouting and if the lineups and situations tonight look a little bit different than they did last night.
Aaron, let's take a step back from Arkansas for a moment, and I know you're watching a lot of other games. We've got our heads stuck in the Razorbacks, and of course I'm covering the baseball team too. Who else has caught your mind that you have watched in the last couple of days that maybe we haven't talked about so much?
Well, I think the concern always this year is, you don't want to get too caught up in conference tournaments, but two teams do come to mind. One I've been high on since before the season. One I've been high on the last week or so. I'll start with my alma mater, UConn, which, they got up to number 2 in the country. They were destroying everybody. They beat Alabama in the out-of-conference. And then they really struggled in the conference portion of the play early, but they kind of had like an Eric Musselman, Arkansas-type February in years past where Arkansas has been great. I think UConn went something like 8-1, 9-1 in their last 9 or 10 games of the regular season, and then they just came out and blitzed Providence yesterday. Now, Providence made a run. They cut it to about 5 or 6, but UConn ended up winning. But listen, that team has pros. They have experience. They can beat you in so many different ways. That's one. And then the other one, I picked them to make the Final Four in the preseason, and they've just dealt with injuries all year. But TCU, I thought, made a statement last night in the Big 12 tournament where you're playing Kansas State in Kansas City, and I know Kansas City's in Missouri, but obviously it's going to be a pro-Kansas State crowd. And they it was, for about 6 minutes in, it was just over. Kansas State, which is a really good team, had no problems. And so, TCU's one where I could see, at their best, they beat Kansas at Kansas. Like, let's never forget that happened. But they were just so injury-riddled all year, and their star guard, Mike Miles, was out, and then he came back, and then they had other injuries. And for the first time, they're really something close to 100% at the Big 12 tournament. And so, you look at the Big 12 tournament, they have a Texas team tonight that they just beat a week ago. And then, on the other side of the bracket, obviously there's something going on with Kansas and Bill Self. We hope he's okay, but he's not coaching in the rest of this tournament. So, it feels like it's open for them to make a little bit of a run. We'll see if they do, but they were somebody late last night after the Hogs game, if you were flipping channels, that was very, very, very impressive.
My UConn guards, man, Kemba Walker, Ben Gordon, but my favorite AT is Khalid El-Amin, if you remember him.
Yeah.
Love me some him. Yeah.
Great guy. I mean, UConn's first national championship. Him and Rip Hamilton were the backbone of that team. Beat Duke in the championship game, just like the Hawks did a couple years before that. So no big deal.
Little Khalid El-Amin, he kind of had a Bartolo Colonna look about him.
He was like a bowling ball that could dribble the basketball.
I love some him. Yeah,
that's right. Aaron, now that you're talking Big East for a quick moment, Mike Anderson at St. John's. Is there a little fire behind the smoke that this could be the end of the road for Coach A at St. John's? And then he's just looked at Rick Pitino isn't that far off in Iona. He's got plenty of history in New York City and in the Big East. Do you see something going on there?
Yeah, so Mike Anderson, Arkansas fans know the Mike Anderson drill. Good in the out-of-conference against bad teams, played nobody, struggled in Big East play, basically were out of it. And then, of course, they made a run late when it was too late. And they lost in the Big East tournament yesterday. And so it's a really interesting deal. Rick Pitino certainly has his baggage. But one, I do think Mike Anderson is done. 4 straight years, no tournament. And, in the portal era, it's just like, yeah, some guys are going to get a 5th year, but it's really hard when Dennis Gates is 23-8 or whatever in year 1 in the portal era, or Chris Jans probably has Mississippi State in the tournament, whatever. So I don't think he gets a year 5. And I'll tell you, I've got some interesting calls over the last few days. I think up until about a week ago, St. John's was kind of on the moral high ground of this is just not a guy we're going to consider. He's got too much baggage. And I think with Georgetown obviously now being open and some other jobs being open, what I can tell you is Rick Pitino wants to stay in New York. He's a big city guy. He's a New York guy. He does not want to leave. And so I think St. John's has kind of looked themselves in the mirror the last week or so and said, hey, do we want to be irrelevant forever or do we want to matter? Because there is a Hall of Famer in our city that wants to be here. You can get a Hall of Famer essentially at a discount price, which is something that it's almost like Chris Beard, and I know it's different circumstances, and I don't want to compare one to the other. But, Ole Miss can never get Chris Beard except under the current situation that they might currently get him.
Right.
And St. John's can never get a coach the caliber of Rick Pitino unless he's 70 years old and doesn't want to move to some random outpost. So I think the Mike Anderson thing is happening. I don't think he'll be back. And if I had to, put odds on it, I would bet that Rick Pitino is the next head coach at St. John's, and I think it's going to make for a really interesting Big East. And I know some staffs in the Big East that are hoping that it doesn't happen because their life is going to get a lot tougher if Rick Pitino were to replace Mike Anderson at St. John.
Man, it would be amazing to start your head coaching career at Providence and then end your head coaching career like 35 or 40 years later at St. John's in a completely different league, but Providence would still be in that league. You mentioned Chris Beard. I'll let you go. Go ahead. You got something on that.
You know who he left Providence. You know what, for what job, though? Do you know what job he left for?
Wasn't it the Knicks?
The Knicks. So, yes, exactly. So, I mean, you talk about a career coming full circle. I mean, this will be his last job. He's 70 years old, in the Big East, in the Garden. He's a Long Island kid. Listen, I don't think any of us are going to get teary-eyed and emotional about the Rick Pitino full circle moment, but, you know, it is pretty fitting. And I will say, listen, we know what his past includes, but he served, you know, quote-unquote, his time, and, you know, he's been cleared by the NCAA. He should get another chance. I don't know if we have time to talk Beard, Phil. I don't want to cut you off, but I want to get that in.
No, that's all right. We can worry about it next week when he's already hired by Ole Miss, because it's probably what's going to happen.
Sure.
Anyway. Yeah.
BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from the NFL and bowl season to esports. You'll find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. We're the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. BetOnline, where the game starts.